What's the haps, Panther fans? It's your boy, the Professor, bringing you the C3 podcast each and every Tuesday night. Is a happy night to be a Panthers fan because I'm here with my boy, Joey, that freaking Puerto Rican Riolano. How you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. School started today, so my vacation has actually started today.
Oh, nice. So your kid's left?
My kid
Your kid left?
Yes, he is back in school during the day, so I am free at last. Free at last, thank God Almighty.
All right, well, that's good. I cannot say the same for myself. I've got 3 kids, and my life is a crazy house, and going to work is the easiest thing ever. But let's go ahead, and I want to jump in and just tell you the topic for the night and introduce our guest. I like the title I came up with, The Good, the Bad, and the Benjamin. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the preseason, Carolina Panthers specific. We're also going to be talking with C.W. Sloan, probably the biggest Tampa Bay fan and ex-know-it-all that I know for sure. And we're going to talk Bucs training camp and their preseason. C.W., thanks for coming on the show.
I'm glad to be here, and I hope to be here more often than this. It's great.
Yeah, we are actually cooking on a project right now that you would be perfect for.
I agree, Tony. Very well said.
NFC South focus, where we do divisional focus rather than just team. In addition, we're going to be releasing some. Once we get some of it fleshed out a little bit more, we'll be telling people about it. Let's go ahead. I want to plug the website real quick, CarolinaCatChronicles.com. Check us out. We've got some good stories up right now on the preseason. 5 takeaways from the Panthers preseason game. We also have Ken Dye put up a big story today, Joey. Panthers may be in for a long contract negotiation with Cam Newton. So he's already expecting that to a certain degree. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on the website. So everybody check it out. Follow us on @cat_chronicles. Joe, I did the ice bucket challenge today.
Very nice. Good cause. Very good cause.
It was my first comments on this is that how many people are doing the ice bucket challenge and they use like a cup of water?
Right.
They have these little buckets. I used a 5-gallon bucket. I used all the ice in my freezer, which turns out to not be as much as you think. But Bill Voth, Black and Blue Review, I challenged you. I challenged Clip Brock from 12 Pirate Radio 1250 and Chris McLean from the Mac Attack on 650 AM. I hope they all donate, and I hope they do the ice bucket challenge. But Joe, how did you like that preseason game this past Sunday under the big stage, the big lights? What'd you think?
I was so happy with the way the game played out, and let me tell you why. Because we were all in communication with one another during those first 3 drives, and I was, to say dismayed would be an understatement. I was disgusted with how we looked in the first 3 drives. But then, I don't know if the rust came off, somebody found an oil can and lubed the offense up, but we really got it together. Cam looked poised and focused. I don't know if maybe they went away from a vanilla play calling style and got a little more involved, but it was fantastic to see them bounce back from such a crappy start and really put together some really good drives.
CW, did you get a chance to see the game, the Panthers game?
Yeah, I actually did get to watch it. Of course, you know, I'm going to get a beat on all my rivals here. I'm not going to just keep up with my own squad.
Okay.
And I agree with him. I do think they did start to do some things more or less in the end of the second quarter all the way through the second half. If I were a Panther fan, though, what would concern me a little bit is that I didn't really see the defense that I saw from Carolina last year. And I know it's preseason. You've got to take a little off of that and curb your enthusiasm, if you're a fan of anybody else in the NFC South, because Carolina's defense will show up. But having said that, giving up over 300 yards in that particular contest, when Charles didn't play, would probably give me a little bit of a pause of concern there. But the offense did come alive, a little bit later on in the game. Jonathan Stewart put it in the end zone like he should have, from the short yardage out. But like I said, I probably would look at how the defense played at some phases of the game and have a little bit of concern giving up the amount of yardage that I felt they typically don't do.
CW,
Yeah.
Speaking of Jonathan Stewart, that was another thing that I was very glad to see. I was glad to see Stewart back in the Panthers uniform on the field. And not only was he on the field, but he looked good. He was moving real well. You saw there was a run where he had a little burst, and you could see why he's such a special back. He's big and strong and fast and quick, and the only problem is he can't stay healthy. But when he's healthy and he's in that backfield, we are a totally different team.
Yeah.
He was, when you said, Joey, the lubricant to get the cylinders pumping, it was a Jonathan Stewart 17-yard run that for first down, which to me is strange that the 3-in-1 oil, that's an old reference to, I guess, some oil that old people use for like all-purpose oil, right? Like Tin Man oil.
Right.
It's strange that Tin Man oil comes from Jonathan Stewart. Like maybe he keeps it in his back pocket to put on his broken, rusty ankles. But I think Ron Rivera described it as him as dynamic, or making the offense dynamic, and that's the truth. As soon as that happened, we are a different team. I really like the outcome. I'm going to tell you guys the 5 things I took away from this game. Everybody can check out the website, and actually, if you click the little box below that says "Join in on the chat," it'll pop up the article right beside the window if you're watching this later on YouTube. But here's the 5 things. Number 1, Cam was rusty. This was to be expected, I felt, is that to ask him to step in, it's not like he is Peyton Manning. He's been doing it for 14 years or whatever, or however long Peyton Manning's been in the league. He hasn't been in the league too long, and he hasn't necessarily become the quarterback, the very refined product that it takes to just walk on the field and throw, go 10 for 10 without really practicing that hard. So I thought this was to be expected. I thought the good news about this was if he was the worst guy on the field in the first quarter.
I agree with that.
And if that is our problem, if Cam Newton is the worst guy on the field, we're in good shape.
We're doing okay.
Yeah. The one thing, though, that did worry me about this is the ankle okay? Was the rust really a squeaky ankle, or was he just a little timid? How did you feel, Joey? Are you concerned? We talked to Bill Voth from Black and Blue Review, and he mentioned this as well.
He did. And I'll be honest and say I wasn't that concerned with it, because when I saw him move, he looked like his normal self. He didn't look to be favoring the ankle in any way. I think maybe he was a little ginger or hesitant in the pocket in that first quarter when it came to stepping into throws and being willing to sort of put yourself out there, so to speak. But in the second quarter, I guess he was over it and realized, hey, I just got to do this. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I didn't see anything that caused me any concern regarding the ankle.
How about you, CW? What do you think do you think that from the outside looking in, is this something that you think could be problematic for Cam Newton this season?
Well, I do think that the NFL gave Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton a little bit of a break in that in the first 5 weeks of the season, Cam doesn't face anybody with a winning record from last year. And I know last year's last year, and you've got to take all that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, because you're one of those teams.
Exactly. And I'll be honest with you. When I saw the schedule out and I saw that he was having surgery and we played you guys week 1 in Tampa, I was actually pretty happy about that. Not because I feel like, we're going to take over the division and ultimately come away with it. But if I want to play a guy who I know can heat up later in the season, who's playing with a bummed ankle and with 4 brand new receivers, I'd love to play him week 1 at home. So, I do feel like, I do feel like that they have a chance to go 4-1, 3-2 in the first month of the season due to the scheduling. But you also have some of those other teams that you've got to face later on. So there again, I do think it's going to be a problem at some point, but whether or not that costs them the division, I don't know. And again, a lot of that is due to the scheduling and to the benefit that they have for playing guys like a Detroit at home, Pittsburgh at home, who's still feeling themselves. They haven't been to the playoffs in a couple of years.
Green Bay at Green Bay.
Yeah. Now Green Bay does come in October, which is going to be a tough game for sure because Green Bay's offense, you're going to have to put up points to match them, no matter how good your defense is.
For sure.
So, but you're going to have 6 weeks before you have to play them. For him to get on par with his receivers and get the defense, fixed from what I saw from the first couple of preseason games. But there again, I don't expect to get 35 points in the first 5 weeks of the season. I think if they do what Tampa likes to do, which is to control the ball, make sure you get them in bad situations near the goal line, make a punt, so that you only have to go 50 yards, 40 yards for at least a minimum of field goal, you're going to be in good shape. But, that's what I see Tampa doing as well. But I do think there's going to be some struggling early on. One thing you also have to consider, and what I've seen in Cam too, is realize this. Sometimes he does get a little frustrated, but you can hear him after games, in the post conferences, you can see him get upset. Not to the point, where he's yelling and screaming, but you do see the frustration in him. And I'll be interested to see how poised he is this year. He's coming at that contract year, and they need to see that for them to give him the contract that he really wants and will probably ultimately get. But you're going to have to see him show his poise when you guys lose 16-12, much like last year against Seattle at home week 1, and games like that where you have a potential to win and maybe you come up short just because you just miss it by a couple of points or by a touchdown.
Joey, that sounded pretty level-headed and informed to me. That's something that we could worry about, and that's something that happened to us last year. So, I can't even really disagree with that at all. I support everything you just said. But I have some breaking news I just found out from Twitter, from Clip Brock, who sent it, and now I've looked it up to verify the source. Kenyon Barner has been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a conditional 7th-round pick in 2015. So, my next point on the 5 takeaways from the preseason game was run, Jonathan Stewart, run. What Kenyon Barner has not run very well at all for the Carolina Panthers. He looks small. I've always been asking for them to try him out at receiver rather than like a slot receiver rather than a running back, kind of like a Darren Sproles type guy, except for not as good. But
Darren Sproles light.
Is this mean that he's going to reunite himself with Chip Kelly? Is he? I always get him confused. Badgers and Beaver. What is it? I don't know. The Ducks and the Badgers.
Yeah. No, he is.
Beavers or something.
He is going back to the guy he played for in college. And I think that's why Chip would make that move, because he knows what he can do and he can fit him into his system. He's not what we need at a back. And I think he's proved that over and over again.
Okay. So Joey doesn't even sound disappointed.
No, I think it's great. We got a draft pick out of it. Yeah.
A 7th, though, but what did we use on him? Didn't we use a 5th on him? Or was it a 7th? I don't know. But we also lost our 7th this year into
Yeah,
injury, and then the Patriots snatched, what was his name, Tyler Gaffney?
Daphne. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I just wanted to put that out there. Kenyon Barner, no more. Thank God we don't got to hear about it. He was going to get cut anyway, so that is good news, I think, is that we got a draft pick for somebody we're probably going to let go. Kelvin Benjamin, Joey. I put Benjamin as feisty, and he got in a scruffing match with this dude, and then he tossed the same guy around like a rag doll on the next play after he got the 15-yard flag or whatever. And when I say tossed him around, like he blocked this guy all the way to the water cooler. He caught a touchdown on his first play of any NFL stage, and that is it was a preseason game, obviously, the first preseason. He was missed. Cam Newton missed him wide open. There was so much real estate around this guy, Joey. I thought he was a land speculator, and he played great in that game. Joey, what'd you see out of Kelvin Benjamin? And then when we asked CW about this, we got to see what he thinks about it in comparison to their guy, Mike.
I like what I saw from Kelvin Benjamin. You know, we've been concerned over a deep threat, somebody that can stretch the field, get behind the defense, and he did that. He was wide open, like you said.
Twice.
Cam Newton just put a bad ball in the air.
He threw it out of the stadium.
Right.
Remember that Mike? Do you remember that Mike Vick commercial or we always thought it was Mike Vick, the Gatorade commercial where the guy throws it out of the stadium?
Yep.
That was Cam Newton.
Exactly. And that's that whole timing thing, the fact that Cam, you can't really simulate game speed in practice, and that's just something that they're going to have to do. They're going to have to get in there and, just do that. And eventually they'll get it. But I really like what I'm seeing from him. I think he's totally legit, despite how disappointed we were on draft night that we picked him. He is turning out to be the real deal.
Part of that, Joey, the overthrown ball, is that Cam Newton could throw a football through a piece of plywood.
Or through somebody's soul.
Yeah, or through somebody's soul, like Greg Hardy's last year. I mean, he has such a cannon, it's like you almost can't control it. What do you think, CW, about the Kelvin Benjamin in the NFC South, and maybe how he's shaping up in comparison to a guy that's a little slimmer of a build, just a little slimmer, but probably close to the same size, Mike Evans?
Yeah, they are a little bit different in size. Kelvin Benjamin definitely could win a 40-yard race against Mike Evans, but it looks like from what I'm watching in the preseason in the two games that they're both actually very good athletes. And you could tell that when they get past the 10 or 15-yard mark, no matter what happens, they're always at least a 50-50 shot at getting the ball if it comes their way. And that looks like how the NFL is going anyway, trying to get these big receivers. As you know, Tampa's done that quite well this past offseason. But you know what? I see two different plays that both of them made this year in the last two games, Kelvin Benjamin in Game 1, Mike Evans in Game 2, that were just athletic plays that no matter what, the corner couldn't stop. And first one, obviously, Kelvin Benjamin's touchdown where he almost falls down. You guys have seen it probably 50 times. And he still managed to get back up off his feet, find and locate the ball in the end zone, dive and catch it. Mike Evans, on the other hand, a couple of nights ago, catches a 17, 18-yard hook, and the guy gets hit right in the shoulder, but it's almost like a gnat on an elephant. It doesn't really matter. He just falls straight down. Mike Evans goes all the way to the end zone, and then that's when you see the rookie part of Mike Evans come to fruition, which is he's holding the ball in his right hand when the cornerback comes from the right side, when all he had to do was tuck it to his left, and it's a touchdown. Instead, they review it, and it's a touchback because Brent Grimes, being the veteran that he is, manages to boot it out right before he gets into the end zone.
So he fumbled it out of the end zone?
Exactly.
Yes, and in listening to the interview after the game, and actually he tweeted he had never been coached to take the ball and move it to the opposite side. He's never run down the field with the ball in his left hand. And I thought that was, for being at Texas A&M, I thought that was absolutely ridiculous that nobody's ever told him. I learned in middle school, make sure you turn the ball to the opposite side of where the defense is coming, especially if you're on the sideline. So in the event that it does fumble, instead of a touchback, or an interception or a fumble recovery, it would always be a fumble, with possession on the offensive side.
Right.
So yeah, that was pretty amazing. But let's also remember too, from what I had read on Mike Evans, this is only his 4th year of actual total team football.
Mm-hmm.
So I just can't imagine what he's going to do 4 years from now once he gets NFL coaching and an NFL quarterback thrown his way. So the sky's the limit for the NFC South when it comes to these two guys. I think they're going to be with their respective teams for quite a while.
They're both so damn big.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize, I never realized just how big Vincent Jackson was until he came to the NFC South.
Yeah.
I guess Vincent Jackson's the same exact size, right? 6'5", 230 maybe?
And I remember him coming out of the draft because a lot of teams had not heard of him. And when he came out of Northern Colorado, he was actually a tight end. He was actually a combo wide receiver tight end, and that was not in vogue yet. Your Jimmy Grahams and your Antonio Gates really weren't in vogue until right around the time Vincent Jackson got there. And that's when you saw Antonio Gates blow up as well. When you had a guy, both of them, the size that they had, Gates obviously not quite as fast as V-Jax, but he could actually stretch the field the way he did. And they decided, you know what, with your speed, we're gonna make you a receiver. We don't care what happens. We're not converting you to the tight end.
Right.
And you could see exactly what happened. And then all of a sudden now, you have all these receivers that are really tall. And I don't think it was a mistake or an accident that we have a starting tight end and 2 starting wide receivers all at 6'5". I think that's something that that this team wanted to try and outdo their opponent by outmatching them with size and a little bit of speed as well. V-Jax obviously isn't as fast as he was when he was with San Diego, but he still can stretch the field. And of course, if you remember that ridiculous play a couple of years ago where he had a 30 or 40 yard catch and he got all the way down to the 2 and he was caught by a defensive back who was pretty slow in my opinion, and he should have scored the touchdown there. It was back in our orange sickle uniforms. I don't know if you can go back and YouTube it and see, but he definitely didn't have the speed he once had. But we're gonna outsize the people that we play, not necessarily outrun them.
He is no slouch. For sure, Vincent Jackson,
right.
Because
Right.
Me and Joey were at the Tampa Bay game last year at Bank of America Stadium,
Right.
And while we pulled away in the second half in that game, you guys came out and were punching. You were trying to. Yeah. It was kind of like that. It's like a boxing match where you're not going to win it, and you're just hoping to get a lucky one on the chin. And they were swinging, trying to get the lucky one on the chin, and they were moving the ball. And Vincent Jackson had a deep bomb catch. Joey, remember it was down the left sideline for us where we were looking at?
Yeah.
And then they're moving the ball. It looks bad. It's the start. And Mike Glennon was in, who played. I mean, I don't even like bashing on the guy. Like, I don't, because first, CW is a NC State fan as well. He is the one-man wolf pack on this show. And so you must love some Mike Glennon.
I do. Yeah, I like that draft pick. Yeah.
Mike Glennon goes to throw the ball, and he sees Greg Hardy, I believe, coming at him, and it just fell out of his hand. He threw it, and it didn't go anywhere. It just fell right out of his hands, and we recovered the fumble, and it stopped that, and then Carolina got their act together. So
that was a huge play in the game, actually.
It was. It changed the whole game. And
a huge play in the game.
But Vincent Jackson was eating us alive.
Yes, he was.
That game, until that point, he was a one-man wrecking machine. It was hard for Glennon to even miss him. And that's the same with Kelvin Benjamin. If you miss Kelvin Benjamin, you would have Andre the Giant is the only other person that's bigger. I mean, these guys are enormous. So you put another carbon copy of him on the other side.
Right.
I don't know how you stop that in the red zone, except for one way, and that is don't let the quarterback throw it. And with that, Joey, another takeaway from the game, our defense, I thought looked pretty good. What's what CW was referencing and us giving up yards is true, and it has been the story of the Carolina Panthers defense. And I think it almost comes natural, and you guys are more X and O football guys than I am. I'm more of like personalities and the fun and the show of football. But it seems that almost comes naturally when you play so much zone defense that people can move the ball, but they can't ever, hopefully they're not going to burn you on it. And over time, you let them keep getting 8 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards, but they have to run, say, 15 plays. And then on one of those plays, you're going to get them for an 8-yard loss. And then all of a sudden that changes the dynamic. Then it's 3rd and 18. And then you pick, So I think that's kind of our game. So it doesn't surprise me that people move the ball on us, Joey. But the corners in this preseason match for the Carolina Panthers, Antoine Cason, a former San Diego Charger, Arizona Cardinal, right, comes here. He's going to be the number 1 corner, it looks like. My nickname for him is Antoine Want Some Cason and Melvin Breaking Bad White, excuse me. Melvin Breaking Bad White. They played good, Joey. How did you feel about the secondary going from preseason game 1 to 2?
Actually, I felt much better about the secondary after this game than I did the first game. I think they tackled well, they covered well, and it was a complete 180 from what we saw in game 1. Now, we still have some questions to be answered there in the secondary, but it was a marked improvement. Can definitely say that. And you're right, Tony, when you're talking about the type of defense we run. We do run a lot of zone, and you do give up yards, but as the field gets smaller, that zone becomes more effective because the out of bounds begins to act like a 3rd defender, the back of the end zone. I'm sorry, a 12th defender. The back of the end zone becomes your 12th defender. So you have less space with which to run your offense. So that's when we can really put the screws to the quarterback and get some heat on him and can't do those quick dump plays that, it's a 2-yard pass that ends up going for, 10, 12 yards. So that's where our defense is bend but don't break. We'll let you go 20-yard line to 20-yard line all day long. You're just not going to get in the end zone.
What do we do, though? What does that secondary do against 3 guys like Tampa Bay is going to bring to the table? Sinafari and Jenkins, how's he? 4 guys. Oh, gosh, there's 4 of them that are that tall? Joey, what do you do in that case? Do you just pin your ears back and hope to get after the quarterback?
That's it. You bring the heat on the quarterback. And that's something we're going to be able to do well in a game for over the course of the whole game because we have increased our number of defensive linemen we're rotating in and out. So we're going to have guys being fresher later in games. They're going to be going against offensive linemen that have played a whole game, or they may have played 3/4 of a game. So that should help us to continue to do that as well in the 4th quarter as in the 1st.
What do you think about that, C-Dub? What could we do against that? Or actually, maybe this is a good time to talk about that offensive line that you guys got in Tampa Bay, or lack thereof, straight up the gut. And let me just go ahead and tell you this one tweet. My favorite tweet and it was from a Bucs fan, and it was after your first preseason game, and he said, man, if this is how our guards play, when we play Carolina, they're going to look like Hall of Famers. What?
Well, we have a lot of things to shore up. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. If you look at, you guys were talking about from game 1 to game 2, the guard play was definitely the one thing that we had to improve. Fortunately, we actually took Kadeem Edwards out, put in a new offensive guard on the opposite side of Oreo Cousins, which was actually an undrafted guy that we picked up off the practice squad last year. and he actually did pretty well. Now, we did give up more sacks than we did against Jacksonville, but when you consider the number of hurries that Josh McCown had, he had no time to throw, and it was very difficult, which caused the pick six against the Jaguars, the only touchdown that the first team gave up. In the second game, Tampa didn't give up an offensive touchdown with their defense, and they put more pressure than the opposing team, the Miami Dolphins. So I can tell you right now, the games won and lost will be decided for both sides of Tampa's offensive and defensive line, whether or not we can control guys like Greg Hardy and whether or not we can push Gerald McCoy and Clinton McDaniel into the quarterback's teeth. From what I noticed, and this was Miami's offensive starting line, they didn't have anything to touch our defensive tackles. And we actually had a defensive end who wasn't playing at the time. So when we start getting healthy on the defensive line, like we in the secondary, which we're really banged up right now, our defense is going to look really strong. But to go back to what you were saying, how do you stop 6'5", 6'5", 6'5"? I don't know that you can stop it. I do think if you're going to play the zone defense, as you reiterated there earlier, you just try to contain it. Don't let them get 15 and 20 yards. Let them get 5 and 6. And hopefully you do get a batted ball down the line at some point. You do get a run stoppage, with 2 or 3 yard loss and put us in a bad situation. But I will say this. I think Tampa was smart in that they had already seen and observed what they're going to be seeing by the referees during these games.
Mm-hmm.
This actual type of physical behavior that the corners have been used to playing is going to favor these 6'5" wide receivers especially, because they're not going to be calling them on the offense nearly as much as the defense. And you might not see the yardage pound up, but you're going to see a lot of flags and a lot of 5-yard penalties with a first down added to it. So I don't like that football. Let me be on record to say I think that's a terrible football game to watch. Some of the preseasons I've been watching, games I've seen already, I've seen 16 penalties per team. And that is just horrendous. So I hope it does change.
Yeah, the Saints had something like 22 or 32 penalties or something. I felt it was like every play.
Ridiculous. It was totally ridiculous. The officials I know it's a point of emphasis, but it is totally slowing down the games and throwing teams out of rhythm. You don't get a chance to develop any kind of rhythm with the stoppage going every play. Really, it's been on series, on drives, you see a penalty every play on some of them.
What you're going to have to do, what the NFL is going to need to do after preseason game number 4 is come back to the table and decide what really needs to be done at this point. I don't really blame the referees because they're being told what to do for the most part. And when they've been told you've got to call this, this, and this, well, they're doing their job, even though it's not what we want to see, on Sundays. So I could see the NFL coming back to the table between preseason game number 4 and week 1 and really trying to look into this and see what, because I could tell you right now there'll be every NFL team, every NFL sports show, Sundays, at 12 o'clock, they will be discussing this week in and week out if it gets any worse or if it doesn't improve. Over the next couple of weeks. I can tell you that.
Do you think that they are trying to call it super tight in the preseason in the hopes of establishing a tone to where they might back it down a little bit?
Well, they're going to have to back it down. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I cannot foresee the NFL playing 17 weeks, going into the playoffs playing like this. I just don't see it happening.
It won't be fun. It won't be a good product.
They have said that they are not going to back down, but I can't believe that to be the case. They're going to say that, of course. They're not going to say, oh, yeah, we're going to not call this. But, yeah, they have to because it's just taken away from the ebb and flow of a game, totally screwing with it.
You know why I don't like it is I think it actually reduces the value of these big-ass receivers like Benjamin and Mike Evans. And what I mean by that is, sure, they're going to get all the calls and all of this, but one of the kind of cool things about drafting guys, he's just going to maul and manhandle little corners, and he's going to be bigger and stronger than them naturally, and you would think he would just tend to win those battles more often. So now, you're like, oh, well, we could have drafted Marquise Lee, and he would have gotten the same penalties because they're calling everything. which I'm on record as saying I'm glad we did not draft him. I don't know what he's doing. Where'd he go? Jacksonville?
He looked pretty good. He looked pretty good in his first preseason game. He's a good route runner. I don't know that he's not going to probably get the yards that Evans and Kelvin Benjamin are going to get just because of the nature of the offense that Jacksonville has. But at the same time, for preseason game number 1, he didn't look all that bad.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And a USC receiver. Joey, what else did you see? I wanted to see, let me see, what else did I say in my article that I thought looked particularly good? And that was, we've talked about Cam being rusty, Kelvin Benjamin being feisty. We talked about Jonathan Stewart. Number 4, we talked about the corners looking better. Number 5, last point on the game that I kind of wanted to showcase was the offensive line. Something that we struggled in, I felt last year, I felt that our offensive line was more highly spoken of than they really were last year by the media, by fans. I mean, the fact that Jordan Gross went to the Pro Bowl, I just didn't see it. I saw Cam Newton running around a lot for his life last year. It wasn't like a San Francisco offensive line. We lose Jordan Gross. Everybody's been wondering what's going to happen. Is Byron Bell going to hack it at left tackle? I thought these guys moved the line. I thought they offered pretty good protection. And you're talking about 2 teams. We've played Buffalo now, and now Kansas City, the second game. These aren't, you're not playing crappy defenses on a one-to-one basis athletically. And so I was impressed. I thought Byron Bell did well. What did you think about the offensive line play, Joey?
Yeah, I thought it was better. I mean, it was really a huge question mark and caused for a lot of concern. But they played better. They're playing well. I guess it's maybe not as much of a weak spot as we've been fearful that it has been. Byron Bell actually looks quite natural over there at the left tackle spot. And he's assuming more of a leadership role because the left tackle is a
natural leadership role.
Right. It's
a
high
position.
Right. It's a high priority position, if you will, or high. People recognize your left tackle. So as a left tackle, he's showing more leadership. He's doing it quietly. He's coming in and just doing what he's supposed to do. He's not saying, "Oh, y'all, you guys said it was going to be so bad. It was a terrible move." Just going in there, putting in the work and doing it. I'm really pleased.
Yeah, he's having fun. Left tackle, defensive end, and quarterback, right? Aren't those like the top 3 paid positions?
Yeah, I think so.
Or, close to it. So yeah. I was happy with that play. I thought we're getting a lot of push up the middle. And so now that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about the preseason game. So I want to kind of just turn our attention to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a little bit more and ask CW a few more things. You noted this. You said your defensive line looked particularly well against Miami. Their offensive line, just to go ahead and put out there, has been garbage for last year when they had their starters, when they had Pouncey, when they had Incognito, which we found out that the irony of all of this is that Incognito did not remain Incognito and Pouncey did in the whole bullying story. Me and Cliff figured that out on Pirate Radio on Monday. But so that, that's kind of hard to say. Your guys' defense is straight. I think is pretty darn good, especially straight up the middle, and that's where you want to be tough. You got the big defensive tackle Gerald McCoy, who's like top 3 in the NFL potentially. You have Levante David, linebacker, who is top 5 linebacker in the NFL.
Big fan of David, I am. I'm a huge fan of Levante.
Joey loves some Levante David, which is crazy. Yeah. He is good, and he's a quiet good. Yeah. And then you guys got the new corner from Tennessee.
Altron Werner.
Yeah. So that defense with Lovie Smith, it should be pretty good. So what are you seeing in camp on that storyline on the defense, and then we'll go to the offense next.
Well, let's remember something too about this defense. You do have 6 starters that have come on from injury in the last year, and then you have also 3 starters who are going to contribute greatly who were not even the same team on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. When you put in a new coach and you combine that with free agents and players that haven't played in Lovey's system yet, you're not going to get the best product in the first season. What you will see is great play from certain players. I do think Tampa's defense will ultimately finish in the top 10 in the NFL, merely because of players like Levante David and Gerald McCoy. But what you'll really see over the next 2 or 3 years, assuming Lovey is still there, is you will see the defense get better, assuming we don't have any other major injuries of sort at this point. Those 2 players you mentioned are on par for being definite Pro Bowlers. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They are. You said top 5 for Levante David. I might even go so far as to say top 3. That's how good he is. In fact, a lot of people were talking about how he was completely snubbed from the Pro Bowl last year, and he was just a product of his environment and playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a 4-12 team.
Agreed.
Right now, we are definitely one of the teams that you can consider being hit with the injury bug, especially on defense. Right now, we are starting a 4th corner as our starting corner on one side. We had a lot of defensive back injuries. Michael Johnson was injured in the last game, so he's going to be day-to-day at this point. A free agent pickup that we had from Cincinnati.
GW,
so we do have, yeah.
Can I ask you about that? Michael
Sure.
Johnson, he came over from Cincinnati, is that right?
Correct. He's a former Pro Bowler. Yeah.
Right. 2 years ago, he had a big year for Cincinnati. He had 13 sacks or 16 sacks, something along those lines. And then last year it dipped to like 8, maybe?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why his production dropped is he became the target of the defensive line. If you remember, Geno Atkins, who is another defensive tackle that is one of the tops in the NFL, got hurt. So naturally, that placed a lot more pressure on Michael Johnson. But their defense still finished in the top half of the league, and he didn't really get the sack numbers, which is what we want our defensive ends to do. But if you look at the defensive front for the Cincinnati Bengals, they were pretty good up in the yard per carry and pass and all of this individual statistics that you can look up for the team. But he just did not get that sack total that he got a year ago. So yeah, I mean, I can see where somebody might say Bauer beware there, but he's going to be much improved from what we had in the last 2 years. Right. So even though you might say, okay, did you overpay for him? Perhaps, but with the free agent pool money that we have, you got to pay for something. Where do we need to go? We needed to pay for the defensive
what
end.
Free agent do you get what free agent do you get that's any good that's cheap? I mean, really, I mean, free agency, you always overpay. I think. I mean, I mean, anybody that's worth a darn, that's the whole point. They're trying to get as much as they can, and you're shopping, so you're willing to pay.
Yeah.
Did he play at Seattle at all?
Who?
The guy you guys.
Michael Johnson?
No, the guy you're referring to is another guy who had a really good game yesterday, and that was the other day, and that was Clint McDaniel. He was the defensive tackle. A lot of people don't know about him, but he's also a guy that put a lot of pressure up there, in Seattle, and started for this number 1 defense in the NFL last year. Now, was he the best player on the team? Of course not. You had the hype for all the other players on that team, but he was one of those guys that just brought his lunch pail every day, started and made sure he contributed to that right defensive tackle spot, and Tampa saw that, and of course, now naturally they actually wanted to come back and bring the guy that they let go to Seattle, which Mr. Bennett, but Michael Bennett decided to stay in Seattle and re-up there, so we went with his partner in crime, and that was Clint McDaniel, and I was a little down on that at first, but after seeing him in camp, he's legitimately the best second tackle that we have. And the fact that McCoy is going to command so much attention, he's going to have a good year as well, I think, for a defensive tackle.
Has anybody stood out on the defense specifically that we would be surprised, or maybe that surprised you so far through camp in the preseason?
Well, we do have a couple of guys that have maybe outproduced their name from people who don't know Tampa. But there again,
which is everybody, by the way, just to let you know.
Yeah, Rashad Melvin might be a guy that I would say has really come on as the next cornerback that we could really plug in and play the dime or the nickel and not be really scared that he's matched up against somebody out there. The problem is in the third quarter in Miami, he came off dinged up, and I saw him watching in practice this week in a walking boot. So that's not good news, for us for the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
So, but that would be the defensive player that maybe some of you have not heard of that you probably will see in heavy action of very important times of the games on defense. But there again, your Tampa Bay defense this year, you're going to just hear these names over and over again. Mason Foster, Levante David, Gerald McCoy, Michael Johnson, Alton Werner. And again, Werner, we haven't even seen him in action yet. He's missed both preseason games, and we hope to get him back. He's saying he wants to play in Buffalo this weekend. I don't see it happening. I think we're going to try to get him in a little bit in the last game against the Redskins and hopefully have him week 1 against your Carolina Panthers.
What's his injury?
An ankle.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ankle/hammy. His ankle is actually probably not keeping him from playing.
That's a bad ankle injury when it hurts your hammy.
Yeah, it's a ham ankle.
It sounds like a sandwich.
The ankle started off early when he came into camp, but that actually got better, and then he tweaked his hammy, and that's the reason why I think he's not playing right now. But I do see him playing a little bit before week 1 against Carolina. I don't think they're just going to get him out there cold turkey. And if you don't see him in Buffalo, you will see a little bit of him in Washington. But I think the whole crux of him staying out is making sure he's healthy to play week 1 in Tampa versus you guys.
Speaking of that, Joey, week 1 when we play Tampa and our offense, an offense that has not had a lot of time together, but may have Jonathan Stewart and a healthy running back core, where you now have a trifecta of backs that can pound the ball. D'Angelo Williams may be the least productive of those guys, which is strange since he has had almost a 5 yards per carry average for his career. So calling him saying he lacks production is kind of an interesting call. Joey, how do you see us matching up against this defense when we got to play these guys straight up the gut? McCoy, David sitting back there waiting for Cam to throw a duck over the middle by accident. What do you think about this?
This is what we are all about. This is going to be the test. We get to play. Well, we're going to have a good test this Friday. First of all, let me say this. CarolinaCatChronicles.com is in partnership with the Fan Zone of Charleston, Southside 17 at Tanger Outlets here in Charleston, and we're doing the Carolina Panthers fan club. So that's where I will be week 1 watching the Bucs game. We're going to get a test this Friday against the Patriots. They have a solid defensive line, good linebackers. So we're going to get a real good test. But that's what we're going to do. We want to run the ball. That's our goal. No matter who we play, we want to run the ball. We're a run-first team. And then we do pass off of the running game. So Sila Tulo, Bell, Khalil, Trey Turner, and Nate Chandler are all going to get a test come week 1 because they better bring it. Because Tampa Bay is they're a good team, and we're not playing the Kansas City Chiefs in preseason. So
I did not feel last year when we played them that they were 4-12 CW?
Right.
Yeah.
The same record as the Falcons, correct? Were they
correct? Yeah, they're both 4-12. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I felt when we played the Falcons
that was a 4-12 team.
Right. And when we played the Buccaneers twice, while we did have some moments where we just took over those 2 games,
especially the game in Tampa. The game in Tampa wasn't very close.
Yeah. That was a Thursday night.
Wasn't that the one?
Yeah.
Where did Glennon was it Glennon that was quarterback at that time? Did he have a rough night that night? Was that one, or was it? I might be confusing him.
Everybody had a rough night that night.
It was ugly.
All right. Well,
that game was never close. Yeah.
Well, we know all about that in Carolina, is that under the big lights, that's a tough stage to play when you're not really a great team or not well coached and mentally prepared. And that seemed to be a big issue with you guys last year. Injuries, a kind of strange coaching dynamic, another college product that did not work out. So was Greg Schiano, and I don't know a lot about him, I guess he came out of Rutgers, is he an offensive-minded head coach or a defensive-minded head coach?
He has the mentality of defense. he has that defense mentality, but the problem with him, and if you've heard a lot of this about him, he wanted his footprint on everything. And I know you think, well, isn't that what a head coach is supposed to do? But sometimes he micromanaged so many different aspects of the game, including special teams, that it was very difficult for the players to feel comfortable in their own skin, for lack of a better term. So they were always so tight, and for other coaches, that mentality has worked. If you're really comfortable and you're real laid back and you feel really safe that somebody's not going to take your job, then sometimes you're not doing your best. And I've heard of guys like Parcells and Belichick, have that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Who Schiano and Belichick are good friends as well. But it just seemed like Schiano did too much micromanaging to the point where I think it was a little over the top. Lovie Smith, on the contrast side of that, is the complete opposite.
Yeah, he's a player's coach.
He's letting the offensive coordinator take care of what he needs to do. He may give his final say, but for the most part, he hired a guy that wanted to have his hands on offense to the point that Jed Tedford has it under, despite the fact he didn't have any head coaching experience in the NFL, but enough to where he felt comfortable letting him run his whole entire scheme without Lovie, having to worry about interfering. Now,
well, tell me about that. That's what I want to hear about. Actually, is all right. So Lovie Smith has never been he's always had to do that because he's a defensive-minded guy. Tampa 2, right? The cover 2 type defense, so it fits perfect into the Tampa Bay culture. But who is this guy? Is it Trestman? I felt like that's
no.
That's the guy from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark Trestman. Yeah. Jed Tedford was the head coach of the California Bears for a number of years. So he quarterbacked, guys like Aaron Rodgers, and other quarterbacks that Kyle Bowler, to be another example, that came into the league and did really well for him.
He coached Marshawn Lynch too, and he coached the guy that let Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he coached all those guys. So when he has talent, he can do it.
So he must have run with the Crips or something, or the Bloods, because those are some tough names he's throwing out. Is that guy? If he's coaching them, he sounds like Tarkanian to me.
Well, look where he is.
He's at the jailhouse.
He's in California, so he's going to some of those areas where they're probably not where you're going to put your home at this point. So yeah, where he had to get into some areas. Hey, even Marshawn will tell you, he doesn't even like to go back to where he was at that point. So
right.
As well.
Right.
It's rough. When they say it is rough.
But talking to Tedford in camp and listening to some of the things that he has to say. Right now, and again, we'll take this with a grain of salt. The guys are never going to tell the whole truth. But so far, he's basically said he's only unleashed about 20 to 25% of the offense. Now, do we really believe him? Possibly. The NFL's not going to show their hand in all the preseason games.
Right.
But what you did see, which I was very, very, really pleased to see against Miami. And the one time that we scored our touchdown, and right before the commercial break and before a timeout, we were actually running the no huddle and getting 3 and 4 receivers lined up and making Miami not make adjustments to our offense. And I haven't seen that in Tampa since John Gruden. So I don't know, again, do we have the 4.2 speed minus Jeff Demps to run those kind of really fast guys down the block? No, we don't. But when you guys can't sub in your big guys and your corners, and you have to play linebackers on guys like Mike Evans, well, they're going to burn you. If you have to play short corners and can't sub in, then we're going to beat you with the size. So I'm really hoping to see that kind of offense gets played in Tampa more often than what it did in the last several years, because you really didn't see that much in Tampa, before John Gruden. Even John Gruden was more of a West Coast anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But to see, I really stopped and paused, because when I was watching it on my DVR, I wanted to count. We actually had 5 wide for the first time since I can remember. When we didn't have to have 5 wide, if we were down 6 with 10 seconds left and have to throw a bomb. It was the middle of the game, second down, 2nd and 7, and we all of a sudden threw 5 guys up there. So that actually pleased me, that now we're starting to see an offensive coordinator take some chances and do some things. I don't know that you would have seen that last year with Schiano. Schiano is going to be a lot more conservative in that regard. So, and Glennon looked, I'll say this, don't be surprised, and you can mark it down on this date, don't be surprised if we play you guys in the second game that you're not seeing Josh McCown, but you're seeing Mike Glennon. I really do.
I believe that.
Tony, did I not say that I think Mike Glennon should get a shot? I think it's a bad move bringing McCown in. I really do. I was just looking at some numbers for him. In his first game, he was sacked, I think, twice, threw the pick, and he had a fumble. This most recent game, he did much better. He played much better. But that's my whole thing with him is when he was in Chicago and had all that success, he only did it for 6 games. He didn't do it over the course of a whole season.
He did it for 6 games. That stunk.
They were terrible.
Well, he did it for 6 games, but let's also kind of look at that as it's an entirety. He had 15 touchdowns, I think, right, and 1 interception. I mean, even in 6 games in the NFL, that's pretty doggone good. And it's all about the offensive line and whether or not they can protect him. He is going to have to take more time to watch the receivers go. I've noticed this about him. He's not going to immediately throw that ball out the minute it gets in his hands. But at the same time, if you can protect for Josh McCown, he is going to get those receivers, and he's going to hit them. I mean, it's hard not to, as we talked about the size of the Buccaneers receivers and tight ends. What you did see in that first game against Jacksonville is you saw Gus Bradley doing exactly what the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trying to do, which is to get that pressure up the middle, not necessarily the edge, and make them go to the middle and force feed them right into the defensive ends. And that's exactly what happened to Tampa. And yes, he should never have thrown that pick 6. That was his fault for the interception. But if you also watch that play, he had literally a half a second before he was about to be hit when that ball, from the time he touched it and put his backdrop foot in. So I'm not going to blame it completely on the offensive line or completely on McCown, but that's a whole part of Tampa's offense that has to be fixed during this preseason for us to be successful. But
I'm with you. I think Mike Glennon deserves to. I won't say deserves to start because I think they brought McCown in to create a competition, and you should. But you shouldn't be handcuffed to a guy alone where you really don't know if Mike Glennon's the guy or not. So you shouldn't just assume that he is going to be. But I mean, he hasn't played bad, and you know what McCown's going to be. It's not like he's a different dude.
Right. He's a journeyman that's been all over the league.
Yeah. And he played, and so I'm not intimidated by him. He's been in the league long enough to not be bad. And he's not broken mentally, obviously, like some of the older guys that have been around, like a David Carr or somebody who is just like a psychological mess. So he had a good season. He could play well. He has to have time, and that's something that we're going to have to – that's our defensive strategy for every team is to deny the quarterback the time and then have those guys that are middle lower tier, I would say, make a mistake, get hit hard, fumble the ball, something like that. Joey, go ahead, CW.
Well, what I was going to say was, and looking at this dynamic, I know a lot of you really are kind of pushing for Glennon, but I want y'all to, and I thought about this over the last year, obviously being a huge fan of the Bucs, but unless you have that innate ability to create plays with your feet or with your arm because it's stronger than anything else in the NFL, most of these quarterbacks who come in the league end up doing better when they sit. And I know Peyton Manning has been on record of saying, if you want to get better, go and play. I threw 27 interceptions, in my rookie year. but I learned more in that year than any other year I had. Okay, great. I get it. But you're Peyton Manning.
Yes.
Brett Favre sat under Chris Miller. Okay. You have Tom Brady Aaron Rodgers sat under Brett Favre. Tom Brady sat under.
Not Flutie. Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe. So you have a lot of these.
Broken.
You have a lot of these quarterbacks who end up doing better because they had a good or even better than average quarterback in front of them, at least to give them that veteran leadership in the beginning, and then let them take, whether it's by injury or by just beating them out in camp the following year. So I'm not in any rush at all. Mike Glennon is 24 years old. I'm not in any rush to take him and make him the starter now because Josh McCown's 35. I don't think we're going to win the Super Bowl this year anyway. But to have him kind of be that bridge between Glennon.
We don't think that either, you guys will win the Super
Bowl. Now, I almost said division, but you know what? I'm not going to give up that word yet.
Okay.
I do think there's an outside shot.
I think it's valuable for Glennon to have McCown come in and teach him how to be a pro quarterback as far as film study, reps, and this and that, things that he wouldn't know because he is so young. But from what we saw of Glennon with no experience last year, I mean, it wasn't
on a terrible team,
on a terrible team with a terrible, the coaching dynamic was all screwy, and he still played fairly well. I think that shows tremendous potential, and just to have somebody come in and snatch the starting job from him after, not a bad year, I just thought it was kind of a crummy thing to do. But, you said it yourself. The second game between the Panthers and the Bucs may feature Mike Glennon at starting quarterback. So if that's how it works out, that's good for him.
Joe, we're going to go 5 minutes long because we have 2 questions left to ask CW, and we have to announce the 5th fan spotlight selection for to finish the contest. I was wrong last week when I held up 2. You were right. 1 left this week. But I know that you wanted to ask him, CW, specifically about something that's happened to the Bucs in this past year.
Yes, I'm wondering.
Or recently.
Right, I think it was within the past year. The passing of Malcolm Glazer. How has that affected the organization? I know Glazer was a prominent owner, not only of an NFL team, but he also owns Manchester United over in the UK. And
that was probably worth more.
Well, sure, worth a ton more. But how has that affected the team and the upper echelon of management?
You just said it in the last couple of tidbits there. I don't know that not to sound harsh, I don't know that the players themselves have been dramatically affected. You're talking about a lot of, again, as I mentioned earlier, turnover, and a lot of people who have yet to even had met him at that point, let alone really developed a strong bond with him. I think where you started to see it affect were the people who knew him that maybe not even be in the Tampa Bay organization now, such as a John Gruden. But you do have people in the upper part of the franchise who have made tweets and who have made comments that I've read and watched some things. The Hall of Fame week when I was watching Derek Brooks get inducted and listening to some of the chatter that was going on in Canton. But yeah, you did see it come through in the Tampa Bay organization, but I don't know that at this point that it's going to dramatically affect them in a positive or a negative way. Much as like a head coach that they all knew, or an assistant, that they played under, or a player that used to be there, in the last 5 or 10 years. I hope that doesn't sound too harsh. But,
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just a fact. Yeah, but as far as guys like me, I was devastated, even though I never met him. Because he is one of the guys that was the reason why, we have won Lombardi Trophy. And, people can say, well, as a coach, as the players, well, it all starts with the owners. They're the ones that pay the players and pay the coaches and make the decisions from the top. And
set a tone. They set so much of a tone and culture an owner does.
Yeah.
And just look at Jerry Jones in Dallas. just look at the Redskins owner Dan Snyder, is that maybe we marginalize too much of how important they are to creating the ethos, or I guess maybe that, they got to be a stabilizing factor, or else you're just going to always be like the Browns or something, where it's just, I don't know the Browns owner that well, but I mean, obviously he isn't a stabilizing factor, whoever he is.
He is the guy that owns the Flying J trucking stations. Remember, there was an investigation into like fraud, a coupon fraud, where people they had talked about jail time for him, but somehow he managed to get out of it. I'm trying to think of his last name. The name escapes me now.
All right. Well, I wanted to ask about Doug Martin real quick. I drafted him. He got hurt last year, right? It was in
week
like
6.
the first game. Okay, week 6. He did not have a particularly effective early start, which seemed to be the team as a whole a lot. I picked him very high in my fantasy football draft last year, like maybe my number 1 back, potentially.
First round, yeah. He was a first-round pick, yeah.
And I also have been eyeballing him this year because I thought, man, he was scary his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I got him in his rookie season. I don't know how. I don't even know if I knew him that well, but I just like heard somebody mention his name. I was like, man, I need somebody, and I just picked him up off the waiver. I don't know. He just crushed it. And he had one game he scored like 58 points for me. What are we going to see out of Doug Martin? Are we going to see resurgent? I call him Mighty Mouse, by the way. His name is Muscle Hamster. He hates the nickname. Are we going to see a resurgence of Doug Martin, or is he a kind of a story of the past almost?
Well, I will say this. You're going to see him get a chance to. A lot of people are talking about the depth of the running back position, but I can tell you right now, Tedford knows that it's going to start with Doug Martin. I don't necessarily see him getting the 1,400 yards and the 10 touchdowns that he got his rookie year. But that was a special year. Let's also go back and look at that season. As you mentioned earlier, he had 58 fantasy points, which basically ended up with 200-plus yards against the Oakland Raiders and 4 touchdowns. And he also had 200-plus yards against the Minnesota Vikings on the Thursday night. So 1/4 of his stats were in 2 games. Now, I'm not going to crush him on that because he's one of my guys. But
those were awesome games if you're fantasy football.
Yeah. By the way,
I think he single-handedly beat the other team that I played that week.
I won my fantasy league that year as well because I had him as my 3rd running back. So yeah,
nice.
He definitely helped me. But I think the better question is not really asking about Doug, but really more asking about the offensive line. We are a better run offensive line than we are pass protection. Having said that, we are going to still have to be able to throw the ball, and if we can throw the ball down the field, we're going to open up lanes for him. Now, whether or not we can actually get our guards to run block the way they did 2 years ago, when we have only one player, actually, I take that back. Our whole offensive line is different from 2 years ago. So we don't have one player that blocked for Doug Martin in that 1,400-yard season. So, when you ask about Doug Martin, you really have to ask that in a bulk kind of question. What are we going to do to be able to run block the way we did 2 years ago? I'm actually not in position to tell you because I've only seen 25% of the offense Tedford is claiming to have shown. So I'm curious. Are we going to be, apparently Bill O'Brien out in Houston wants to throw more than they're going to run. But at the same time, I don't know if we're going to be more of the running team or the passing team. Tedford has not really shown that yet.
All right, I got a little homework assignment for you while I announce the fan spotlight selection of this week. I want you guys to think of one thing to tell our audience that you will be focusing on watching this week. It could be related to your team, it could be related to football. While you guys are thinking on that, I want to announce Jonathan Bishop. Right? Jonathan Bishop submitted this entry, and we have a contest, CW. I don't know if you know about this. We have a contest,
No, I don't.
the Fan Spotlight contest, where we are selecting a fan story each week. For the last 5 weeks we've done this, and we're showcasing their story, and then the fans are going to vote on it, and we're going to give them 2 tickets to the Lions game and dinner at Firebirds. That's the home opener. And so this is this week's entry. He said this: "It all started the summer the Panthers came into existence. I remember visiting family in Spartanburg, South Carolina as a young wee child. Everything was grand in those days. My father would take me to Panther practices, and even then I knew something was special about Carolina's team. As the years went by, my love grew for the team. In 2002, I became really sick. To spare you the horrific details, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Colitis. At the age of 13, he said there was many long, hard-fought years ahead, but he could always find joy in watching the Carolina Panthers. I remember, he said, I remember my dad taking me to a game at Old Erickson Stadium, and it felt like it was below freezing, and he was sick. He said he ended up throwing up repeatedly at halftime. Afterwards, his dad asked him if he wanted to leave, and he said, 'Are you crazy? I'm going to miss the chance to see our team play.' He said the following year he was in and out of the hospital. He watched the games from the hospital with multiple IVs in his arm and lacking strength even to climb a set of stairs. He would cheer on the team. He says this was about the time he started reading more about the great Sam Mills story. With his faith in God and with his story touch, it gave him hope. Today, after multiple surgeries, he is a healthy 25-year-old man. Without Sam Mills," he says, "in the Panthers," he said he's not sure if he would have been here or if he would be healthy to this day. But he has learned life is always bigger than yourself, and when times get tough, there's only one thing you can do, and that is to keep pounding. He said, "I'll always be grateful to God to put me through this, for I am better for that. As going forward, when I hear keep pounding to me, it's more than a saying, it's a lifestyle. Go Panthers." That, guys, was a moving entry to me, for anybody. And I love the fact that, man, what a positive outlook on the whole thing. And I have always said this, is me and Joey's had some health problems throughout his life. Me and Joey used to be roommates in college. And, you know, football has kept us friends over a long distance. It's like breaking bread. And, you know, you can see that with this kid's story. So, Jonathan Bishop, thank you for your entry. Go ahead and tell your friends to vote for you. I hope you win. There's a lot of good entries. You're going to be competing. The one thing I don't like about this is his Twitter handle is Cameron Crazy.
The Dookie.
So, Cameron Crazy something. So, I guess we won't hold that one against you, but CW will, and he'll also hold the fact that you're a Panthers fan against you. Tell us, CW, what will you be looking forward to this week?
This weekend, the Tampa game.
All right, just whatever. Even anything in football that you'll be keeping your eye on. Whatever, you pick.
Yeah. Well, this is week 3. Okay, so week 3 in preseason means I'm looking forward to quarters 1 and 2 on all the games. I'd really like to see how the teams progress from the week before. I particularly would like to see who, you know, even though I don't really care much for him, who's going to start the Cleveland game. Neither one of them looked too good the other night, so that's going to be something of interest. Tampa going to Buffalo and playing a defensive line that you guys have already faced. I'd like to see for the first quarter and a half. I'd like to see us try to put the ball into the end zone and do something with our offensive line and get better than we did before. Of course, as you know, you've got an NC State guy waiting to tear us down there. So I'm hoping that we can contain him for the first half at least, and be able to get at least a touchdown or 2 against that starting front against Buffalo.
Joey, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the matchup against the Patriots for the Panthers. It is their first. It is the 3rd game, the one that's treated most like a regular season game, and it is the Panthers' first away game of the preseason. So they're going to a hostile environment there at Gillette Stadium. So I'm interested to see how they prepare for that, And like I mentioned earlier, the Patriots have a solid defensive line with big boy Will Fork, and I believe the guy's last name is Harris, another big defensive lineman. So I'm interested to see how they're going to perform. The offensive line performs against that group.
Yeah, they're going to have something to prove after the last second. The flag that was picked up.
Right.
On Monday, was it Monday night?
Monday night. That's
Monday
right.
night.
Monday night.
Luke Kuechly with the typical handsy pass coverage that he does. I'm going to be looking forward to that, and I'm going to be hoping that we just stomp the living shit out of damn New England Patriots because I hate them. Here's what I'm looking forward to, guys. When I hang up this hangout tonight, I'm going to go in and put an entry into this contest called That Moment, hosted by U Stadium, which is our good old boy Frankie V, Joey.
Oh, no kidding.
The Jets, they have launched this big U Stadium app where it's kind of like a fan social network where, it's a social network for football fans, and it's all through the app. And I don't have the app yet because it's for Apple stuff right now, and the Android is still to come, and I don't like the evil empire. But here is what I'm looking forward to, and CW, you will like this and hate it simultaneously. This sign right here, the open-handed beatdown, my moment, because you have to say in 45 seconds what that moment is your like fan perspective, kind of similar to ours, and that is my moment, 2003, Panthers run to the Super Bowl, week 2 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We won 12-9 after blocking 2 field goals and an extra point with 0 seconds left to send it into overtime, where we then kicked a field goal to win. So we beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers without scoring a touchdown, essentially without an offense entirely. Our defense laid an open-handed beatdown on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's embarrassing when you get slapped around. Some guy was going to beat you up, and he didn't punch you, and he just slapped you around. It's embarrassing. That is that moment. I was at BW3's watching that game. I still remember it. I was like, how the hell are we winning a game by just blocking field goals? It was awesome. So that is my moment. That's what I'm going to be looking forward to. So everybody check our guys out at U Stadium, Frankie V, the chicken cutlet guy. What I would just to go ahead and say is everybody check out CarolinaCatChronicles.com. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on the website. Every Mondays I'm going to be on Pirate Radio with Clip Brock talking Panthers in the NFL. We've got some things coming up. Hopefully CW will be a part of this little thing. We're going to be talking about an NFC podcast that maybe Joey's got a great title for it. Joey, tell one last thing. Mention Southside 17 Fan Zone. What's going on there in Week 1?
Again, Week 1, we will be kicking off the Carolina Panthers fan club of Charleston, South Carolina. We'll be having some really cool stuff going on over the course of the year. We'll be doing raffles of various things provided by the Fan Zone. Southside 17 has a great menu, great servers, fantastic venue for watching games, and as the Panthers fan club, we will have a big 70-inch pull-down projection screen that we'll be watching the game on. We're going to be the game that is coming over the PA system, so we'll be listening to it. It's going to be a really good time, and we're expecting a good-sized crowd, so make sure to get there early.
Awesome. So that's where we're at. Check out the podcast, guys. iTunes, Stitcher. We're blowing up, Joey. We've hit a big milestone in the hits today on the website. I'm very excited. I'm excited about Panther football. CW, I want to thank you for coming on, man. You were great.
Yeah, thanks for coming on,
CW. Please have me on anytime, okay?
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it, guys. You guys, everybody have a good night.
All right. Good night.
Take care.